I ultimately made the man who screwed me over believe he'd lost out on $80. 000. And the most satisfying part is that it all started when he tried to use my professional expertise for free. I've been a real estate broker in Chicago for the better part of 2 decades now. But this story comes from my very first week on the job. I was working at a tiny, independent brokerage run by a man I'll call Mr. Davison. He was getting on in years and wasn't in the best of health, so he often passed new leads to his agents. That's how I got the call. A longtime friend of his had passed away, and the friend's son wanted to sell the house. I called the son, a man we'll call Victor. He immediately laid it on thick, telling me how he'd known my boss, Mr. Davison, for over 30 years and how close their families were. He sounded like a genuinely nice guy. I went over to the house and, being new and eager to impress, I poured everything I had into preparing for him. I put together a gorgeous comparative market analysis, a detailed report showing what similar homes in the neighborhood had recently sold for. I was so determined to do a perfect job that I had other, more experienced brokers check my numbers. I had my presentation materials professionally printed. I prepared for any possible question he might have, and I rehearsed my responses to any objection he could raise. When the day came, I completely dazzled him. He loved the list price I recommended, $135. 000. He had no issue with the commission rate. Everything was perfect. But then he hit me with the stall. He asked for 2 months to clean out the house. Let his siblings go through their late father's things, and maybe throw on a fresh coat of paint. A seasoned agent would have gotten the listing agreement signed right then and there, with a future start date. But I was green. I trusted him, especially because of his supposed deep connection to my boss. I simply said I'd call him back in 2 months to get it listed. He made a critical mistake right then, trusting a man whose handshake was as empty as his promises. I didn't know it yet, but this misplaced trust would set the stage for a lesson Victor would never forget. Just 3 days later, I was driving through town when I saw it, a bright, obnoxious "For Sale by Owner" sign planted in the front yard of the very same house. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I'd been completely played. He had bluffed me, used my professionally prepared analysis to set his own price, and cut me out entirely. All those hours of work, all that effort, wasted. This move revealed Victor's greatest flaw, a profound arrogance, believing he could outsmart everyone and get something for nothing. It was this cheapness that would ultimately cost him far more than just a commission. About 6 weeks later, Mr. Davison was at City Hall paying for property transfer stamps, basically a city tax that finalizes a real estate sale. By pure chance, he noticed Victor's name in the registry. He'd just been in to pay for the stamps himself, which meant only one thing: the house was already sold. I waited until the full 2 months he'd asked for had passed. Then I picked up the phone to enact my revenge. I played dumb, talking fast to get the whole story out before he could interrupt me. "Hey Victor. It's Alex over at ABC Realty," I began, my heart pounding with a mix of nerves and adrenaline. "I figured I'd give you a call to see if you got the house cleaned out and repainted, because I had a relocation company call me. They have a doctor moving to the area," I continued. "When they described what he was looking for, I immediately thought of your house and mentioned it to him. It's only 2 blocks from the hospital where he'll be working. And after I told him how nice it was, he basically told me to make you an offer. Sight unseen. Now, I couldn't quite remember the exact price we discussed, but I told him $215. 000. I paused for effect, letting that number hang in the air. He couldn't believe how inexpensive it was. But he's coming from New York. You see. He said your house sounds like it's 3 times the size of his current place for half the price. Anyway, he's an all-cash buyer and needs to move in 3 weeks. So, would $215. 000 work for you? Because I can write it up right now. Fax it over to him for a signature. And we can get this done. The other end of the line went utterly silent. I could practically hear the gears grinding in his head. The confusion slowly curdling into horror. Then, he exploded. You fucking asshole. He screamed, his voice cracking with rage. You told me it was worth $135. 000. I feigned surprise. Well, we hadn't even listed it yet. And it looks like I just got you an extra $80. 000. What are you so upset about? I just sold that fucking house. He roared. I sold it for $130. 000 because you told me that was what I should expect to get. Oh. Damn. You sold it? I said, injecting a note of disappointment into my voice. Well. Good for you. And good to know my estimate on the market value was spot on. No problem. I'm sure I can find something else for my buyer. Fuck your buyer. I want my $80. 000. I don't know where you're going with this. Victor. I said calmly. You sold your house for a price you were happy with. You got fair market value. So you did great. I just happened to find an out-of-towner who, on a fluke, was willing to pay more. But hey. It's sold. Congratulations. Fuck you. You prick. You're going to pay me $80. 000. Well. That's not going to happen. I countered. My mistake was quoting my buyer the wrong price. Not you. If you really want to push this, I can just hire a professional appraiser to prove you got fair market value for the house. You can expect to hear from my attorney. He shrieked. That's fine. I said, delivering the final blow. But I have to let you go now. Victor. I need to get over to your old house. I want to see if the new owners might give me a copy of their appraisal and see if they'd be interested in selling it for a quick profit. Do you know if they've moved in yet? Motherfucker. He slammed the phone down so hard I think my ear rang for a minute. I hung up. A slow smile spreading across my face. Part of me felt like a jerk. But another part of me felt the immense satisfaction of perfectly executed revenge. As someone later pointed out when I told this story, the real beauty of it was that I managed to make him furious without actually harming him in any material way. I got my revenge and the moral high ground. And he knew, with burning certainty, that his loss was a direct result of him trying to screw me over. But the story doesn't end there. To drum up new business, I have a practice of offering to help people find tax comparables for free to help them lower their property tax bills. It's a little trick of the trade. But as someone once commented, it's a pretty genius way to build relationships. On a whim. I went to meet the new owners of Victor's old house. They were a lovely couple. And they were thrilled with my offer of help. 8 years later, just before the market crashed, they called me to sell that same house. They had done some beautiful work on it. And we listed it at a top-notch price. They got $345,000 for it. Their plan was to do a back-to-back closing, selling their place and buying a new one on the same day. In a stroke of terrible luck, the house they were buying burned down just before the closing. They went ahead with their sale and moved in with relatives. Just 2 months after they sold, the market completely tanked. They stayed with family for 2 more years, waiting out the storm. And then, I helped them buy the deal of a lifetime, a huge 4,000 square foot foreclosure for only $130,000. It was a new construction that just needed finishing touches. Today, that house is worth over $500,000. They've been overjoyed and have sent me several referrals over the years. I eventually told them a watered-down version of the story with Victor. They weren't surprised, saying he was a jerk to deal with and that he'd actually gotten into a huge fight with his own siblings at the closing table. He apparently demanded they give him an extra $20,000 from the proceeds because he had to handle the sale himself, and that's what the realtor would have charged. The irony was, because of his father's friendship with my boss, we were only going to charge him a 4.5% commission, which would have been less than $6,000. So, did Victor ever get his lawyer? Yes. About a year later, he called the only lawyer he knew, Mr. Davison's brother. The lawyer called my boss. My boss called me. And I simply handed over my original market analysis and a copy of the appraisal the new owners had happily given me. It was perfect. As another observer noted, every angle of this situation only trapped Victor tighter in his own web of misdeeds. We never heard another word about it. In the end, trying to cut corners and disrespect other people's time and expertise doesn't just burn bridges. It can make you the fool in your own story. What goes around truly does come around. So, let me ask you, what would you have done in my shoes? And have you ever had a moment of sweet, harmless revenge that you still smile about today?